We can park here, right?
Yes.
A young couple fled with 200 million in cash, only to be gunned down on the street. The killer, before leaving, made sure to add a few more shots. From afar, Curly watched, his legs shaking uncontrollably. At a Philippine casino, if you try to flee with cash, you'll first need to get permission from the bullets. The true mastermind behind all this was a casino kingpin named Wuji. This was a minor operation he personally arranged. Wuji operates a casino in the Philippines, earning hundreds of billions of pesos annually. He's incredibly wealthy. One day, he took his subordinate, Sang Biao, to a business meeting. Unexpectedly, his counterpart suddenly started reciting poetry in the car. Wuji frowned deeply upon hearing this, finding such a lack of culture truly exasperating. The two bickered and squabbled all the way to the casino. Wuji instructed Sang Biao to wait in the car, while he himself entered with his men. However, the restaurant, usually packed, today had only a few scattered patrons. Even stranger, the waiter leading him was secretly calling, staring at him. Wuji's heart sank, he turned to run, but was immediately caught by the National Investigation Bureau. Amidst the sirens, Wuji was dragged by police and shoved into a patrol car. Reporters at the courthouse entrance were thicker than flies. Camera flashes crackled, blinding him. This murder suspect, pursued transnationally by Korean police, finally faces trial today. As he faced relentless questions about the murder details and his transnational escape, Wuji stubbornly pursed his lips, not uttering a single word. The handcuffs on his wrists bit into his skin, but they brought back memories of even more painful days. When he was young, his father Da Zhuang went to prison. The family was so poor they couldn't make ends meet. His mother had to put him in a nursery. Wuji, craving delicious fried chicken, dared to take his little brother Zhengxun and brave a fire ant nest. Despite painful bites from venomous ants, they still managed to fill a bag, trading them for Korean won at the herbalist grandpa's. But the greedy owner raised the fried chicken price, and this money couldn't even buy chicken bones. With no other choice, Wuji resorted to a scheme, winning money from the chow beggars, but he ended up losing all his hard-earned cash. This was also Wuji's first encounter with gambling. The two, dirty and ashamed, snuck back to the orphanage. That night, starving, they saw stars, grabbing pig feed from the fence and stuffing it into their mouths, only to be caught red-handed by the teacher. The teacher then told Wuji that his mother, Seon-mi, was taking him to live in Seoul. The two kids sat on the front bench dreaming, city life must be great, no more secretly eating pig slop to fill our bellies. Unexpectedly, their beautiful dream came true. Shanmei really came to the orphanage to take him away. After all, for kids there, being picked up by family was rarer than eating meat on New Year's. Wuji immediately started a new life with his mother. Shanmei works as a maid for a wealthy family. Though she gets no pay, the leftover food from banquets is 100 times better than starving at the orphanage. Wuji is also sensible, often catching tadpoles to sell to an old lady for her chickens, earning pocket money. But just as their lives improved, their father Da Zhuang, who was in jail, was released after serving his sentence. The gangster boss came home, saw no decent meal, and raised his hand to get violent. Luckily, Wuji found an excuse and talked him out of it. Da Zhuang, hearing Wuji was illiterate, surprisingly bought books to teach him to read. He then gathered his whole crew to open a gambling den at home, and business was booming. Wuji was also sent to school, eagerly studying with his textbooks. Just as their lives seemed to be improving, it was only a matter of time before trouble struck. Da Zhuang's two subordinates were caught cheating at the gambling den. He lost his temper and couldn't control himself, severely injuring them. He was once again thrown back into prison. To make ends meet, Wuji had no choice but to drop out of school and run away with Shanmei. The two drifted to Daejeon, hoping to start a new life. The restaurant owner, pitying the mother and daughter, cleaned out a side room for them to stay. The only condition was that Shanmei had to help with errands and odd jobs. At least the mother and daughter finally had a safe place to call home, a shelter from the storm. However, one day, as Wuji was strolling on the street, she suddenly ran into Yonghun, a brother from the orphanage. This kid, so hungry, ran from the orphanage to survive. Now he's a tool for a news vendor. Each paper sold for 71, but the vendor took 50. If you had one left, you'd get hit. Wuji saw this and right then decided to join them. Others begged and pleaded to sell papers, only daring to take 5 or 6. But he boldly asked for 100 copies and raised the price to 101. Wuji immediately turned and rushed into the cinema, specifically targeting young people and couples. First, he knelt down to shine their shoes. Once he saw they were happy, he quickly pulled out newspapers to sell. While other newsboys were crying out in pain after selling out and getting beaten, Wuji and Zhengxun, however, were carrying bulging money bags to settle up with the newspaper vendor. This business acumen was simply the mark of a born money-making genius. Later, this kid really made a name for himself, opening an English cram school with top foreign teachers. It quickly became the hottest ace student factory in the area, bringing in a very substantial monthly income. Wuji thought he was doing quite well, until Jung-hoon showed up at his door. Only then did he realize he was just a frog in a well. The guy who used to get beaten up selling newspapers with him, now transformed, became a gambling machine middleman, earning a net 5 billion Korean won a year. Working so hard at the cram school, the pay isn't even a fraction of what others make. Zhengxun wasn't looking to flaunt wealth, some thugs owed him money and reneged, and he couldn't use force. Knowing Wuji excelled at handling such messes, he specifically brought him in for this big project. Wuji had been involved with gambling since childhood. As soon as he heard Zhengxun say that opening a casino was the real way to get rich quick, Wuji's mind immediately turned to grand money-making schemes. Zheng Shun, seeing this, quickly took him straight to the docks underground casino. Outwardly, it displayed a bar sign, but secretly, it held many secrets. Winners had to exchange drink vouchers for cash at a winery, a hassle that would drive impatient people mad. But Wuji, with a glint in his eye, instantly spotted a business opportunity. He immediately decided to partner with Zheng Shun to open a new place, but he insisted on cash settlements because simple and direct is what truly attracts people. Wu Tai directly called his childhood friend, who was the police chief. They'd been inseparable since childhood, so this small matter was easily resolved. Then Wu Tai surprisingly pulled out 30 million Korean won and took over a failing bar as the venue. Meanwhile, Yung Hoon recruited over a dozen skilled female dealers. To save the girls from extra travel, Wu Tai built simple dormitories right on the top floor. With basic renovations complete, the bar and gambling den opened with a bang. Customers poured in and business was so hot it could blow the roof off. Wu Tai even hired a cook so gamblers could grab a hot meal during their breaks. For this place, he also hired local thugs as security guards. But surprisingly, it wasn't the police who came looking for trouble, but the IRS agents who showed up first. Plainclothes officers, disguised as gamblers, infiltrated the casino, and with the IRS, they completely raided the gambling den on the spot. Meanwhile, Wu Tijing and Zheng Shun were elegantly playing golf. When they got the call that the gambling den was raided, they were instantly dumbfounded. Wu Tai quickly told Zheng Shun to take the money and run. Leave all the bank money behind after all, saving his life is most important. He then gave Zheng Shun a secret phone, warning him not to contact anyone during this time, not even his wife. But Yung Hoon worried billions would go to waste, so he quickly called his wife to sell their assets. Unexpectedly, the tax agency tracked him down by his location. At first, this guy was very stubborn, adamantly claiming he knew nothing. However, when the agent announced a 45 billion fine and a 5-year prison sentence, Yung Hoon's legs instantly gave out. Eventually, Zheng Shun confessed everything, but just at that moment, Wu Tai suddenly made a call and the agent quickly snatched the phone to negotiate with him. Wu Tai, seeing the situation, quickly sought help from his childhood friend, a police officer. But his friend replied that if the National Tax Bureau got involved, even deities couldn't help. He then urged Wu Tai to flee immediately, promising to find a way to clear his name later. Wu Tai fled all the way to the Philippines. Coincidentally, he met his senior Ergo and his brother Dong Yi there. As the three sat together chatting, Wu Tai's thoughts drifted back to his student days. Back then, he was the undisputed leader of the 11th grade, and Dong Yi was one of his loyal followers. However, one time at dinner, the senior leader Ergo told Wu Tai to greet him first, but the hot-headed Wu Tai refused to listen, and they instantly became sworn enemies. Ergo then brought a few men to Wu Tai's door, cursing and yelling. Wu Tai's fiery temper wouldn't tolerate such disrespect, and they immediately started fighting. The ruthless Wu Tai actually beat Ergo black and blue. But Ergo's uncle came to settle scores. Sean Mei quickly apologized after finding out, even making Wu Tai kneel and admit his mistake. They thought the matter was settled, but Ergo's uncle deliberately wouldn't let it go. He not only punched and kicked Wu Tai, but even threw Sean Mei to the ground. Wu Tai immediately snapped, and Ergo quickly told his uncle to stop. After all, he was also at fault. Who knew the uncle just pulled out a knife? At that critical moment, Da Zhuang, fresh out of prison, appeared just in time and beat the arrogant guy to a pulp on the spot. What's even more incredible is that the next day, Ergo actually sought out Wu Tai to propose a reconciliation. Men's friendships are just that magical. The two, who met through a fight, ended up becoming brothers. Right after high school, Ergo took Dong Yi to the Philippines to seek their fortune, and now he's a manager at a local gambling company. When Ergo heard about Wu Tai's troubles, he immediately took him and Dong Yi to the casino to clear their minds. When Wu Tai saw the lavishly decorated gambling floor, he was instantly stunned. Compared to the small factory he ran in Korea, this was like a convenience store meeting a huge supermarket. Even more astonishing, the VIP rooms hosted clients from around the world, whose deposits were astronomical. Ergo immediately introduced him to Mr. Min, the casino agent, a prominent local figure. Wu Tai, with years of experience, quickly mastered the game and soon won a fortune. In a good mood, he learned Dong Yi's son needed money for overseas study and instantly offered a huge sum. But gambling, there's no always winning, never losing. Wu Tai's luck suddenly took a sharp downturn. He not only lost all the money he'd won, but also his principal, and ended up owing President Min a huge debt. Who knew that at this very moment, a local thug suddenly came to cause trouble for President Min? Seeing this, Wu Tai quickly found an excuse to send him away. No one expected that this seemingly ordinary act would set the gears of fate clanking into motion. In the days that followed, Wu Tai, desperate from gambling to turn his luck around, met Xiaobai, a local loan shark, through Ergo. He borrowed a lot of money from him, but still lost everything. However, Dong Yi, who ran the travel agency, actually used Wu Tai's money to suddenly start driving a luxury car. That day, while picking up goods with Xiaobai, Dong Yi even said he'd found a free ATM, but Wu Tai, who had helped him, couldn't even afford a meal. Just then, a female agent from the Korean National Tax Service contacted Wu Tai again, saying if he returned to the country and paid his taxes, they wouldn't pursue criminal charges. They even threatened him using Wu Tai's children, but he hung up on them immediately since Wu Tai currently had no money at all. Afterward, he quickly contacted his wife in Korea, planning for them to come live in the Philippines, and he intended to sell their house there to recoup his gambling losses. He never expected that an accident would happen that night. Da Zhuang suddenly fell ill and was hospitalized. His wife urgently pressed Wuji to return, but he felt uneasy, fearing the tax bureau had already flagged his passport and he'd be arrested the moment he landed. So he quickly asked his childhood friend, the police chief, but the friend told him to return without worry because the tax bureau hadn't filed charges. Seeing this, Wu Ti quickly packed his bags, but Xiao Bai with his men arrived late at night demanding payment. Wu Ti, enraged, instantly pinned Xiao Bai to the wall and the surrounding thugs immediately drew guns on him. But Wu Ti calmly said he was just going back for his father's funeral and would repay the debt with interest on his return. Xiao Bai was instantly subdued by his kingly aura and obediently left with his men. Before leaving, Wu Ti quickly asked President Min for a debt extension. Since he had just helped the other party settle a matter a few days ago, President Min saw he was both good at fighting and at accounting. As he was short-staffed, President Min immediately brought Wu Ti into the business, handing him the VIP lounge. Wu Ti was so grateful, he quickly asked Dong Yi for 300,000 pesos to buy a plane ticket. But to his surprise, Dong Yi had no money at all and had even spent his child's tuition money on drugs. It turned out he'd developed a drug addiction over the years and had just bought a supply from Xiao Bai. After being captivated by Wu Ti's aura last time, Xiao Bai quickly asked Dong Yi about Wu Ti's identity. Only then did he learn that the other party was once a soldier and had even been to war. And after Wu Ti learned Dong Yi's true nature, he could only scrape together money to buy a ticket back to Korea. However, as soon as he got off the plane, he learned that Da Zhuang had just passed away. Wu Ti's memory flashed back to high school. After his father was released from prison, he stopped gambling but got hooked on illegal drugs. Their lives were more bitter than Kopti's, and he was days at home every day. Then one day, Da Zhuang found out Shan Mei had secretly sold a house for Wu Ti. His father, high on drugs, immediately abused his mother. Wu Ti, unable to bear it, pushed his father down and took his mother away from home. From then on, father and son never saw each other again. My return home for the funeral was also driven by a slight sense of obligation. Unexpectedly, a man claiming to be Wu Ti's half-brother suddenly appeared at the funeral. Wu Ti immediately and rudely rebuffed him, then left. However, just then, a female IRS agent suddenly found Wu Ti, demanding he pay tens of billions in fines. But Wu Ti knew the IRS had no evidence to prosecute him, so he immediately engaged the agent in a psychological battle. Wu Ti said he had no money and would rather go to jail, even stating he'd take his family to settle in the Philippines. Seeing this, the female agent, after careful thought, astonishingly cut the hundreds of billions down to 800 million, and the case was closed. This was a huge leap, and colleagues were puzzled, believing that Wu Ti should be appealed against in this situation and sent to jail with Zheng Shun. The female agent turned her head and explained that the evidence they had wasn't enough to prosecute Wu Ti, so they'd fine him as much as possible, otherwise her own salary wouldn't be paid. After the matter was resolved, Wu Ti immediately returned to Manila, Philippines, and used President Min's emergency funds to pay off Xiao Bai's debt with interest, even adding extra interest as compensation. Wu Qi, short-staffed, simply decided to bring Xiao Bai on board, even offering him 5% of the shares. He advised Xiao Bai not to always resort to threats for debt collection, but to learn to ask for money civilly. Xiao Bai was instantly moved to tears by this righteous gesture. Looking at the big brother before him, he couldn't hold back and secretly dropped a bombshell, hoping Wu Qi would let Dong Yi go. It turned out that the news of Xiao Bai's debt collection visit was actually Dong Yi's doing, a stab in the back. This guy not only played dirty tricks, but also made a fool of Wu Qi. Wu Qi couldn't believe his brother, who'd starved with him, could be so heartless. That very night, he urgently sought out Dong Yi for a confrontation. It turned out Xiao Bai hadn't lied. The naive follower from back then had long turned into a venomous snake. Dong Yi, thinking he'd made something of himself, was single-mindedly focused on outdoing Wu Qi. Dong Yi's arrogance showed no trace of their past friendship. Facing Wu Qi's questioning, the very next second, shh.
Wu Qi.
The timid Dong Yi, in the end, didn't dare to make a move. Seeing this, Wu Qi directly laid out the truth. From then on, they would go their separate ways, all past affections cancelled, owing each other nothing. This also served as a serious wake-up call for Wu Qi, reminding him that the world is treacherous and true feelings shouldn't be given away so easily. After that, Wu Qi threw himself entirely into his career, using his brilliant mind to help President Min rake in 300 million pesos. As per their prior agreement, Wu Qi was to get 50 million, but President Min, valuing his talent, personally added another 50 million on the spot. Wu Qi was so moved he couldn't close his mouth. President Min also planned to give him more business, but with one condition. He then tossed a stack of documents filled with Korean debtors who wouldn't pay. Wu Qi instantly agreed to take on the debt collection task and promptly packed his bags to return to Korea. We didn't expect to hit a snag right after landing. That director is just being difficult, insisting on a fight to the end. The next moment, Wu Qi went straight for a big move, making an example. When a gangster punk refused to pay his debt, Wu Qi went to his wife's salon, enthusiastically supporting it, making it impossible for her to do business. This trick worked like a charm and soon helped President Min recover all the outstanding debts. After finishing his tasks, Wuji rushed home to see his mother, Shanmei. He was surprised to find his mom had learned to read. The two sat chatting, and Shanmei served her homemade miso soup. However, as soon as Wuji took a sip, memories flooded back like a dam breaking. In Wuji's senior year of high school, a good teacher recognized his potential for academics. Fearing he might go astray, the teacher not only urged him to study daily, but also used half his salary to support him. Wuji, seeing this, studied hard. His exam scores were good enough for any Korean university. He was about to turn things around, but his helpful teacher fell ill and resigned, replaced by a greedy old man for applications. Seeing Wuji couldn't afford his books, he cursed and brainwashed him, tricking him into a third-rate university. Wuji found the school ridiculously bad, so he just dropped out and left. After leaving campus, Wuji by chance got caught up in student movement. Seeing a biker gang bully passers-by, his hot-blooded nature made him rush to save the trapped girl. Unexpectedly, he accidentally injured someone and was ultimately arrested and sent to prison. It was then his mother brought miso soup to visit him, a taste that would stay with him for a lifetime. After his imprisonment, those radical students suddenly sought him out, and Wuji, in his confusion, became the student movement's security captain. His every move was watched daily like a thief. Wuji feared his mom would worry again, so he was desperate to flee. After much thought, he could only join the army, but with a criminal record, regular units wouldn't even consider him. At a crucial moment, Wuji ran into Minister Jin, who was recruiting intelligence officers. Jin didn't care about his dark past and immediately pulled him into his team. After rounds of brutal training, Wuji's inherent ruthlessness and quick wit helped him get selected. Little did he know he'd joined the North Korean intelligence team tasked with gathering intel in North Korea. The danger was simply outrageous. During the years Wuji served in the army, he developed immense courage and genuine capabilities. It was these life and death trained abilities that made Chairman Min praise Wuji as a reliable young man to everyone he met. Ever since he helped the other party recover all the debt, they directly handed him the exclusive VIP room operating rights. With Chairman Min's help, Wuji gradually established himself in the Philippines. He didn't forget his promise and immediately assigned Xiaobai to his subordinate Jung Badai. But on this day, Wuji's subordinate in Korea, Shang Zhe, suddenly called. His friend, Xu Taishi, had gone to the Philippines, and he asked Wuji to look after him. Wuji, always loyal, immediately agreed. Little did he know, Xu Taishi had just met Chairman Min. It turned out his father was a construction tycoon. Xu Taishi's adult entertainment venue in Korea was shut down, making him a wanted criminal, which is why he fled to the Philippines to lay low. Seeing this, Chairman Min decided to keep him. When Xu Taishi heard Wuji call his name, he initially came in arrogantly, but learning Wuji was Shang Zhe's big brother, he immediately softened, promising to visit again tomorrow. Wuji, seeing he was trouble, planned to pay him $10,000 to leave, but the man wanted to join the gambling business, infuriating Wuji, who then insulted him on the spot. Just then, Chairman Min returned to his office, looking quite disheveled. Wuji learned from Jung Ba that local gang boss Sang-gu was again forcing President Min to lend money, even violently making him kneel. Wuji instantly blew up. His boss was being bullied. It was like someone was shitting on Wuji's head. He immediately went to Sang Biao's hotel, only to find Ergu there too. It turned out Ergu was Sang Biao's subordinate. Wuji warned Sang Biao to stop targeting President Minjo. Ergo quickly urged him to leave, but Sang Biao deliberately made things difficult, demanding Wuji drink a whole bottle of strong vodka. Then the matter would be settled. But Wuji, a man of few words and fierce resolve, grabbed the bottle and chugged it down. Before leaving, he warned Sang Biao's men. They were instantly impressed by his courage and looked at Wuji with new respect. He used his skills to help Chairman Min out of a bind, earning his increasing trust. Over the next few years, Wuji, through his chip washing operations, converted some chips to cash, others to high-end restaurant vouchers. Even his female staff enjoyed lavish meals daily. He easily amassed a steady 70 billion Korean won and even had police escorts, living a life of great prestige. But money alone wasn't enough. Wuji immediately began to ponder how to connect with political circles. After a chance meeting with the president's secretary again, Wuji annually gave political donations to the mayor. Seeing many invitation tickets were left, he suddenly came up with a win-win solution, having the secretary bring politicians to the restaurant for weekly seminars. He treated the politicians to free lavish meals, and Wuji used the chance to meet more political figures. Who knew this trick actually worked? The seminar grew bigger and bigger, even the president's son came to show support. However, on this very day, the secretary introduced Wuji to an important figure, Daniel, who was even called the god of gamblers of the Philippines. He was seen in every casino in the Philippines. Daniel could even influence presidential elections. Seeing this, Wuji unhesitatingly revealed his ambition, and with Daniel's assistance, his career instantly ascended to a higher level. On that very day, Wuji brought Jung Ba to investigate a struggling casino, where Jung Ba unexpectedly encountered true love in Yoon Sun, a hostess. Wuji, seeing this, quickly urged him to prioritize his career, not to spend all day thinking about romance. They immediately found the owner to collect the debt, but he pleaded poverty, claiming he had no money. Wuji didn't press for the debt, only gave the boss a 1-month deadline. If the money wasn't repaid by then, Wuji would take over the place. Just then, the boss's subordinate, Philip, suddenly stepped forward to get chummy. Seeing that the other party knew their mutual friend, he immediately greeted them warmly. No one expected that this inconspicuous small character would later ignite a series of troubles. But when Wuji went back to report to President Min, Xu Taiki suddenly exploded. It turned out this casino's mess was already his to deal with. He was convinced Wuji intentionally stole his work, slamming the door and leaving. This hot temper clearly shows he's not to be trifled with. Zhengba already disliked him and quickly reported him to President Min. Shu Taiki often beats his subordinates, even causing fatalities. But President Min passed the buck to Wuji, telling him to deal with it. That night, Wuji was dining with the police chief, who then introduced Cho Yun-ki from the Korean embassy. Wuji's heart sank, as Korean police were hunting him everywhere. Sure enough, Zhao Yun-ki found him increasingly familiar, then pulled out the arrest warrant from Korea, and the photo clearly showed Wuji. The man quickly fled, but Zhao Yun-ki got his number from the chief and called to question him. Wuji could only stammer and try to evade. Turns out, when he helped Chairman Min collect the debt, he beat a gang boss. The boss reported him for extortion. Then, as if things weren't bad enough, the Philippine political scene suddenly changed. All the politicians Wuji sponsored were replaced, and the Monday political seminars were cancelled. Without political backing, Chairman Min's casino immediately ran into trouble. Luckily, he found a new backer, the son of a Korean construction company owner at the Karitz Hotel. The chairman immediately decided to transfer all Manila operations to Karitz. Sandio's company was even absorbed, and Philip became Wuji's subordinate. One day, Zhengba suddenly pulled Wuji to the restaurant for a meal, then mysteriously brought Yun-sun over to introduce her. Their feelings were already clear, and Zhengba successfully won the girl. But just then, Chairman Min's call suddenly blasted through, ordering Wuji to quickly bid for the Ritz Hotel. The two immediately argued, and Chairman Min's anger hadn't yet cooled down when the local chairman suddenly appeared at the casino, specifically telling Wuji to quickly finish the project. Meanwhile, Zhengba took the chance to help Yun-sun find a job. Wuji couldn't resist his subordinate's plea, so he agreed. Yun-sun successfully became a casino employee. Unbeknownst to Wuji, when he was inspecting with Philip, In-shan was flirting with Philip. Her mind was not on Zhengba at all. The fuse of this love triangle was lit. Don't let the hidden currents here deceive you. Wuji's career in Karitz has been skyrocketing. Upon arrival, he aimed to secure the new hotel's casino project, but the manager stammered, saying a company had already invested a year ago. Wuji immediately put his arm around the manager, gently persuading him that if he didn't resolve this properly, he'd be sent to meet the king of hell. Then Xiaobai and Zhengba instantly threw down 100 million pesos. The group left, leaving the manager sweating on the spot. Soon after, Zhengba suddenly received an urgent project proposal. It turned out Professor Luo, the Little Bee, had brought a major client. This Little Bee specifically refers to those who lose all their money at casinos, then refuse to leave just to attract new customers and earn commissions. This time, President Zheng, brought by Professor Luo, runs a large company in Korea and is said to be worth 40 billion Korean won, a fat sheep ripe for the slaughter. Meeting countrymen abroad, 3 drinks in, they were warmly calling each other brothers. Wuji kept toasting, then feigning to help President Zheng upgrade his hotel in flight, he casually took his passport and thoroughly checked it. After confirming he was a fat sheep with only money, the abacus in his heart immediately started clattering. After all, to catch a big fish, you must first cast your line. Wuji first spent all night with President Zheng, building rapport, then played golf with him, indulging his hobbies, and then naturally led him into the gambling hall. Once Professor Luo's work was done, Philip paid him immediately. President Zheng, however, was immediately hooked once he sat down, and soon lost all his money. Then red-eyed, he asked Philip for 500,000, but surprisingly lost it all again in no time. President Zheng wanted to borrow more. Wuji quickly pretended to warn him against addiction. However, Zheng was enchanted, insisting on one more game. Wuji then made a big move, taking 10 million pesos from his own account. He colluded with the dealer to set up a scheme, letting Zheng win several rounds in a row. Now Zheng was completely hooked, playing with his own money. In a flash, he won another 10 million. Wuji, feigning concern, urged him to quit while he was ahead, then helped him launder the money and send it back. President Zheng completely dropped his guard, accepting this reliable brother wholeheartedly. However, just days after returning home, President Zheng, using a business trip as an excuse, surprisingly went back to the Philippines. Wuji, who loved drinking and gambling, gave him the highest level reception, and this time he won another 100 million pesos. Watching Chairman Zheng's happy departure, Wuji knew full well this was a trap carefully dug for him. Sooner or later, Zheng would have to pay back principal and interest. Meanwhile, Philip was smoking outside, and Yun-sun immediately went to strike up a conversation. Spotting Philip's chest tattoo, she quickly feigned curiosity, reaching out to touch it, making Philip instantly blush and his heart race. He then cautiously asked about Yun-sun and Zhengba's relationship, but she claimed they were just ordinary friends. Philip was instantly overjoyed, quickly asking her out for dinner another day. But Yun-sun, it turned out, had ulterior motives. The very next day, a major figure arrived at the casino, Chairman Ju, worth trillions of Korean won. This person had previously spoken with President Min, the self-made female magnate, ruthless and detached. Her powerful presence instantly silenced the room. Yun-sun's eyes instantly widened. She quickly asked about their person's background, then went to fawn over them, but the club president saw through her and completely ignored her. At that critical moment, Philip suddenly appeared. It turned out he knew the female president, and with just a few words, he got Yun-sun to the dinner. During the gathering, the president joked about setting them up, which In-shan liked. She was ambitious, craving wealth and status. Seeing Philip was more capable than Zhengba, she immediately decided to pursue a higher branch. That very night, In-shan and Philip became intimate in bed. Hoping to latch onto the club president, she pestered Philip to learn his preferences, even hanging up on Zhengba's incoming calls. But she had no idea that Zhengba, who was right downstairs, saw everything clearly. The next day, local thug Zhang Mao suddenly appeared, mysteriously telling Wuji that 2 Korean investors wanted to check out a gambling project. Zhang Mao wanted to partner with Wuji to scam them. Zhang Ba, seeing this, quickly warned him not to trust them. It turned out these investors were fraudsters who'd raised 50 billion in angel funding in Korea and then fled. But Wuji said he already knew, because he was the one who set the trap for them.
Within a few days, 2 investors suddenly arrived in the Philippines. Zhang Mao immediately arranged royal treatment for them, with stretch limos escorted by police cars. The display was dazzling.
At the dinner party that night, after drinks and a full meal, the investor suddenly changed the subject, quickly asking about Wuji's casino earnings. Wuji was stunned. He immediately dragged Zhang Mao outside to question him, and only then did Zhang Mao stammeringly confess. It turned out Zhang Mao had pocketed both their money, even using Wuji's name as collateral. Wuji was so furious he almost kicked him, then told him to quickly transfer the money to the casino account, to be managed by Wuji. Unexpectedly, the 2 investors, thinking more at home, realized they'd been scammed. They contacted Zhang Mao overnight to withdraw their investment. However, the other party instantly flew into a rage. He showed up at their door threatening them, saying they were wanted criminals in Korea and wouldn't dare cause trouble in the Philippines. He warned them to stay put and not seek death, or they'd end up dead in the streets. Meanwhile, criminal cases in Kalis have been piling up recently, especially those involving Koreans, one after another. South Korea quickly dispatched Officer Arjun to the Philippines to assist local police with the investigation. Although Arjun had little practical experience, he had won 2 outstanding police awards. Upon arriving at the Kalis police station, Arjun was instantly stunned. The office conditions were incredibly poor. An old officer specifically warned him to be careful there, as everyone in the Philippines carries a gun and his life was at stake. Arjun, however, carried 2 burdens. Ostensibly, he was investigating a murder, but secretly he needed to get evidence of the president's gambling in the Philippines. The Philippine police earnestly warned him, saying Wuji's background was so strong he was untouchable, telling Arjun not to court disaster. But Arjun ignored their advice and boldly stormed into the casino. However, the one who greeted him was Enshan. It turns out that not long ago, Enshan used a honey trap, successfully convincing Zhang Ba to make him an agent. Just then, Arjun suddenly stumbled upon the female president playing cards. Arjun discreetly excused himself to the restroom and immediately returned to secretly record a video on his phone. The female president was playing exceptionally wildly today, directly betting 200 million pesos, even using a girl's underwear color as a wager. Who knew she actually won, making hundreds of millions in this one round? The female president quickly had Enshan convert to won and wire it back. Meanwhile, Arjun snuck back to his rental with the video, sending the evidence home. Little did they know, as they won so much they were grinning ear to ear, President Jung at the next table was losing so badly he was twitching. Not only did he lose all the money he had won before, but even the billions he brought himself went down the drain. He was so furious he nearly collapsed crying at the table. Meanwhile, Wuji's friend John suddenly arrived in Kalitz, claiming he had a job for his boss. Knowing Wuji was familiar with the local casino, he asked him to help him get inside to kill someone. Wuji didn't hesitate, immediately leading him in. Soon after, the target appeared at the card table. John gave Wuji a look, and Wuji instantly understood, discreetly leaving the table. It was clear something was about to happen that outsiders shouldn't see. Right after Wuji left, John quickly followed his target into the restroom. Before the man could react, he pulled out his gun and swiftly dealt with the problem. The bodyguard was also eliminated. After confirming the target was dead, John quickly took photos of the scene and sent them to his boss to report back. It turned out this unlucky fellow was betraying the boss, secretly dealing in stocks behind his back, which ultimately led to his death. Meanwhile, Long Mao's talks with 2 investors completely broke down, his temper flared, and he turned murderous. To cover his tracks, Long Mao dragged the bodies to a desolate wilderness and casually threw the murder weapon off the bridge. Later, the kid was scared senseless and went to Wuji for help that night. Upon hearing this, Wuji wanted to cover for him. After all, if the Philippine police didn't file a case, South Korea couldn't pursue charges. Wuji immediately told Zhang Ba to find an untraceable, discreet car and arrange for Zhang Mao to escape and lay low. But who'd have thought, seeing the black-clad man in the car, the other party instantly imagined a murder to silence plot, frantically waving their hands, claiming they hadn't killed anyone, completely ignoring Wuji's advice, stomping on the gas and speeding off. Sure enough, days later, the 2 investors' bodies were found by police. Arjun rushed to the scene upon hearing the news, but Wuji, having heard the news, arrived first with Zhang Ba. Wuji identified himself to the police, then surveyed the scene, almost laughing in anger. The disposal site Zhang Mao chose was hard, barren farmland. A regular shovel couldn't even dig a shallow pit. He must have given up, just leaving the body and walking away. What's worse, Zhang Mao hadn't transferred the investment funds to the casino account. Wuji rushed to his house for the money, but the place was already empty. Unexpectedly, Zhang Ba suddenly found bloodstains in Zhang Mao's car. They checked the in-car surveillance, and this guy's disposal of the murder weapon was clearly recorded. The 2 quickly destroyed the evidence, because if the police caught Zhang Mao, everyone would go to jail with him. Just then, Xiaobai called, saying Zhang Mao's account only had 30 million pesos left. A massive 200 million had simply vanished. Wuji was so angry he almost crushed his phone. He quickly told Xiaobai to freeze the account, and then went to the investor's hotel to check. The ground was a complete mess, and Wuji only found a few money orders, but just at that moment, Philip's phone call suddenly came. Enshan had run off with the money while exchanging it for the president. Wuji rushed back immediately upon hearing this. Facing the president's furious shouts, he stated Enshan was just a hotel manager, completely unrelated to anyone. After all, the casino was also a victim. Wuji completely washed his hands of it, infuriating the president who nearly flipped the table but could only manage a harsh threat. Wuji quickly had Enshan's background checked, only to discover he was a veteran scammer. Enshan, a Korean woman, once stole 700 million from clients and fled, even serving 6 months in jail. Coming to the Philippines was purely to resume her old tricks, but from the start he wore his scammer identity on his sleeve, making both men instantly feel guilty and look down. Wuji quickly rushed with Zhengba and Philip to Enshan's home, only to discover it had long been abandoned. Wuji immediately questioned Zhengba, who swore an oath he had absolutely never betrayed them. But Philip in the corner felt so guilty he kept scratching his head. He suddenly saw his lighter on the nightstand and quickly, clumsily stuffed it into the lamp. However, this small action was clearly seen by Wuji. Wuji instantly had an epiphany. Meanwhile, because the victim was Korean, the case naturally fell to Jun. The Philippine police gave him a local tip for solving cases. Since the victim was Korean, it was highly likely one of their own people was involved. They told him to have Korean police Jun contact an informant, and he actually uncovered a crucial lead. The two investors were brought by Chang Mao. Following the lead, he tracked him to a BBQ restaurant, where he coincidentally ran into Chang Mao himself. Under questioning, Long Mao was as stubborn as cold-cured meat, claiming he dropped them at the hotel and left, hadn't seen them since, and even threatened Jun. Meanwhile, with the fraudulent investment funds still unrecovered, South Korean police quickly sent reinforcements, dispatching 2 elites to the Philippines to help. The 3 first met at the police superintendent's office. On the way, Jun heard a crucial piece of news. Wuji had been to the crime scene and might know some clues. He quickly went to find him to understand the situation, but the new Korean officer suddenly started acting like a big shot, bossing Wuji around. The other's face darkened, refusing to serve even with proof. Luckily, Jun quickly stepped in, and Wuji then calmed down, directly showing Chang Mao's security footage. Police followed the video to the warehouse, found the crime tools and issued a warrant for Chang Mao. But Zheng Ba looked bewildered. After all, his big brother had protected him back then. However, Wuji stated that the other party was untrustworthy and ran off with the money. If he had just paid, Wuji could have made the case seamless. It was all Chang Mao's own doing. Meanwhile, Yunsun, hiding in the motel, called her seriously ill mother, promising to bring money home in 2 days for her treatment. Then with 200 million pesos, she looked for a money exchange. However, Wuji's informants had already staked out the money exchange in the Philippines, and her location was instantly pinpointed. Meanwhile, Wuji was cleaning Philip's house, where she found not only Yunsun's passport, but also a cozy photo of the two of them. Wuji immediately called Philip, telling him to go to the money exchange to bring Yunsun back, and urged him to be careful. But when Philip went out, he found his car was gone.
Xiaobai just drove back. Let's quickly get a ride to the next place.
Philip saw Yunsun get out of the car and grabbed her. Yunsun was still gleefully preparing to take the money and make a run for it. It turned out they were partners in the heist, planning to escape together. But Yunsun's greed took over. She wanted it all, so she ditched him and ran off early. Philip couldn't reach her, so he called Wuji, reporting her betrayal to clear his own name. Now Yunsun has nowhere to run. Philip urged her to confess and beg for mercy. As the two were fiercely arguing, a killer disguised as a cop suddenly emerged, and with a few shots sent them both to their deaths. He then coolly walked away with the money, scaring Xiaobai almost out of his mind. Upon hearing of their deaths, Zhengba was instantly heartbroken, while Wuji feigned innocence, blaming the police. And the killer was none other than John, a professional casino hitman. Wuji offered payment, but John waved his hand, pulling a stack of documents from the trunk, revealing a Hong Kong corporate bank account. It turned out John's owner was gone, so the money couldn't be withdrawn, and he had to ask Wuji for help. After they parted, Wuji immediately hid the money in a secret base. Enshan's shooting case also landed squarely on Jun's shoulders. He saw the victim was from the Wuji casino, and his head instantly felt like it was going to explode. After all, Long Mao was still at large, and now a new murder case had just crashed down on him. He was so swamped, he didn't even have a moment to catch his breath. That evening, Jun was at home working out, when suddenly there was a knock at the door, but when he opened it, he saw no one. On the ground lay a folded note, revealing Long Mao's exact hiding place. It turned out this was Wuji's kind tip. He used the long-haired girlfriend's social media to track them down to the Paradise Resort Hotel. Jun gave the information to the Philippine police, but they dragged their feet getting there. As a result, Long Mao had already checked out and fled yesterday. Even more infuriating, the Philippine police didn't care about the Korean case at all. They completely botched the investigation, leaving Jun to handle it alone. Meanwhile, Wuji again encountered Koreans who wouldn't pay their debts. He immediately sent his men to deal with it, using both persuasion and threats, forcing them to call around for money. The whole ordeal was like a debt collection comedy until they finally gathered the money. Wuji, seeing the money arrive, didn't quibble and waved his hand, letting them go. He thought it was over, but little did he know this was just the beginning of trouble. The aggressive demands for money made the father frantic, so the old man called the police. The South Korean government quickly reached out to Zhao Yunqi in the Philippines. He immediately identified Wuji as the mastermind, then contacted local police for arrest assistance. Wuji's men also exchanged fire with Shu Taishi. That day, Shu Taishi, with the hotel project, moved into cards, his arrogance soaring, completely dismissing Wuji. The other party already had a beef with him, but President Min was shielding him. After all, this kid had a unique knack for government ties. Even Zhao Yunqi of the Korean embassy was close to him. Wuji had to swallow his anger for now, but Zheng Ba couldn't stomach it. During one clash, he refused to fight back and was beaten black and blue by Xiao Taihi like a panda.
Wu Tai heard this and immediately bristled. He summoned Shu Taishi to his office for a talk, but the other party was still incredibly arrogant, relying on Chairman Min's influence, swearing and throwing his weight around. Xiao Bai saw this and was absolutely enraged, directly pinning him to the table like a human mural.
Wu Dai told him to first consider his own standing before acting so aggressively, warning that he could be replaced at any moment. After all, Wu Ti was President Pei Min's most loyal supporter, built up from nothing. These words left Shu Taishi completely speechless, his face flushed crimson like a boiled shrimp. Wu Ti then delivered a final stern warning. If Shu Taishi caused any trouble in Hong Kong, acting so arrogantly, he would make him completely disappear in the Philippines.
Meanwhile, Jun received another tip-off. After a tremendous effort, he finally apprehended Chang Mao. This cross-border manhunt finally landed a big fish, but knowing the fierce Filipino culture where everyone carries a gun, Jun that night used his underground contacts to buy a black market gun for self-defense. Meanwhile, the news of Chang Mao's capture had barely spread when undercurrents on the other side were already surging. Wu Ti's story is practically a classic rags to riches tale. As a child, he'd brave a burning pile for fried chicken. As an adult, to escape gambling debts, he'd join a ruthless gang leader. His entire life, he's been making money on the razor's edge, like a venomous snake, perfectly at home in the Philippines, knowing precisely when to lie low and excelling at a deadly strike. His most brutal talent is using loyalty as a bargaining chip and sheer ruthlessness to pave his way. Ultimately, Wu Ti is just a pathetic wretch hardened by life's cruel hand. It's also a warning because those who get rich through gambling often lose to their own greed. They might win money, but they could also lose their lives.
And who was the mysterious person who pointed a gun at Wu Ti right at the very end? Let's eagerly anticipate the next update of Life and Death Gamble.